of the judges that knows that it works. Because even the head judge thought it didn't work, but it does. Basically every match, Princess. Basically every match. Which is fine. It's a new interaction for Modern that people aren't familiar with. I mean, like, fusing spells or casting instant speed Armageddon does seem a little... I'm gonna mulligan. Oh, there we go. That's better. I mean, that does seem overpowered, does it not? It does seem a little bit too good. Just a little bit. Yeah, if we want the land... I left it on top. If we want the land, we can leave it there, the Hallowed Fountain. Otherwise, we can just crack this and we're moving on. Yeah, basically every match, Princess Marceline. Basically every match. Just fine. Yeah, I do want the land. Just gonna go Fountain Tap, go. Scylla says instant speed Arma is a little busted. It is, but it's legal. I went 7-3-3 color red, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I mean, day 2. I did everything I wanted to do. Alright, so we're playing against Grixis. Grixis Fixis. I played against... This is actually a hard matchup in theory for us. Although, when I played against Grixis, I did okay at the GP. We'll see how we fare. I think Colas is a concern. Spell Snare is actually more so my concern here. Maybe a Thoughtseize. He'll take one of the 2 pieces. B- for Zilf. Poor Zilf. I assume this is Spell Snare here. For sure. The benefit, I guess the thing you can say is definitely a Spell Snare here. Phew. Definitely. I mean, maybe he doesn't have it. Just jam. I've had some players have the Spell Snare and they're just not interested in countering Brain because they're like, this card's a joke. Spell Snare. I mean, it's a snare that's going to hit a Snapcaster Mage later on in this long, grindy game we're about to engage in, so it's fine. This is where he's like deciding whether or not the Spell Snare is worth spending on the Brain right here. Plenty of players do. There you go. Go. Yes, you do want to spend the Spell Snare. And he's right to do so. Just tuned in. How are you getting killing all lands to instant speed? It's easy. Just run Boom Bust. It's easy. We were working on like my team and I, ever since Brain Jar was spoiled, we were working on all sorts of ways to bust this, to just totally just like either like we were trying to cast Ancestral with it, Living End, Restore Balance, fuse spells with it, split cards. Card's nuts. Stupid could. I mean, obviously, it's still, like, I don't, the beauty of it is there are things in the format that fight it, which means it'll never be too strong, ever. Ever. Because, you know, like, Hand Hate can pull it apart, you've got Spell Snare in the format, you got Abrupt Decay in the format, there are plenty of good answers to it. Here, I might even just loot it away, because he did take the Brain, or he counted the Brain. But, like, it's very powerful, though, when it's not answered. Like, Armageddon, very powerful in Modern, Beck Call Fusion, very powerful. Breaking and Entering is really strong for the Grizzlebrains deck. You've got, you could play Braincestral with like a Sacrifice Engine. Alright, Snapcaster is fine. This looks like just a Thought Scour. It's fine. Yeah, I mean, like, when paired with the right spells and the right build, it's just enormously powerful. I mean, I wouldn't have day 2'd the GP without it. Everybody was gunning for the blue at red Nahiri, so if that's what I'd taken instead, if that's what the blue at, I mean, I wanted to play blue at red. If I'd played blue at red Jeskai, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have made it day 2. Like, everybody was gunning for that deck. But the Brain let me do some really busted things. I was blowing up people's lands, I was drawing 4 more cards, making an army of 1/1s at the same time. It felt pretty good. Looks like he's a little starved on land. Did he leave it on top? I think I just loot here. He just loot. Yeah, does that make sense? How does that make sense? It's probably the strongest land destruction I've ever played in Modern. The Boom Bust off of the Brain in a jar, to my recent memory. Alright, I mean, we have more copies of this in the deck. Let's just go ahead and pitch it, and then try to set it up again later in the game is fine. Go. Especially against, like, Kolaghan's command decks. I'm not really that interested in trying to set this up anyway. They have plenty of ways to disrupt it, whether it's the Kolaghan's command itself, or the like a Spell Snare or Abrupt Decay. James wants to know how you Ancestor with Brain. Very easily. It's actually, well, that's one of the harder things to do, actually. Let me reiterate. So And I talked with the judges at the GP about that too. I was like, this is something else. Like, there was another thing we wanted to do with the brain in a jar. We were casting Ancestral with it in my testing. It was fantastic. Basically, if the brain should leave the battlefield while it was on 0 charge counter, so, for example, hold priority after you tap it in response, you either sacrifice it or you remove it from the battlefield through, like, a bounce effect. I mean, you technically could, like, cryptic the brain. That seems bad, though. And then tap it. If there's an Ancestral in your hand, to cast it. It doesn't work, Smogert. Hex Parasite actually doesn't work with the brain in a jar because you can't take the charge counter off the brain. You need to bounce it or you need to sacrifice it. Taking the charge counter off actually doesn't do what you want it to do here. Smogert, in fairness. Oops. In fairness, it doesn't work. We tried that. You can't like retroactively take the charge counters off of the brain in a jar. You have to bounce it or you have to sacrifice it. Now there are plenty of ways to do that. You just have to find the best way. We thought it was Thought Their Foundry. You can run Hercules Recall. Just a way to bounce. Should I consider the Nahiri a real thing? She's an alternative win condition. Like, and she's fine. I didn't like it. A lot of people were gunning for it. Just because there's a 5% chance that they make it day 2 doesn't mean it's necessarily great. It has very good there's some matchups, Skyward, that are very good for her. There are some matchups where the 4 mana you can tap, tapping out for a 4 mana walker is fine. There are some matchups in Modern that you just committed suicide. You're dead. So I don't mind Nahiri or even Nahiri Emrakul out of the board, but you need to be careful when you do so. All right, Kola returning a Gurmag. It's fine. Since I met you, just trying to think what I want to do. Do I want to bolt the Snapcaster? Resolving a Cryptic is hard in this matchup, I'm assuming. They actually don't run all that much permission, but they do run some. Do you want to take out the Snappy? No, we can do that later. Let's just pitch the bolt. Hold on to the 2 double Cryptic Snap. Snare, fantastic. Go. List is not. List is not. Although I didn't take the other list that I couldn't tell you about. I guess I can tell you about it now. We had a couple different... Basically, we had a bunch of different variants of Brain or Jar I was thinking about taking to the GP. Or my teammates were. We had a Thopter Sword Brain that was doing the Ancestral thing. We had the Blue-White-Red Beck and Call. And then we also had... no, we had 4 technically. We had an Ad Nauseam deck that used it. We had a Blue-White-Red deck that used it. And then I also had built... Or we had built, I should say, a counter draw. We had built also, what was it, Grizzlebrains. So we had a Grizzlebrand deck that used it. It's basically Grizzlebrand with Brain. Just 4 different flavors of Brain, basically. Cryptic on my Cryptic? Oof, okay. You usually don't see Cryptic in the Grixis shells, but some people like it. I do. If I was going to play Grixis, I'd consider a copy or 2. For sure. No Path. Just bounce the Gurmag. He has to recast it. Seems fine. It's not great, but it gets the job done. Druid Anger. Go. Alright, so I actually had an idea. Pretty greedy. Something you want to build. Sure. I'd love to. Buddy did a day 2 with Eldrazi. Nice. I saw several people on the deck. It looked great. It did look really good. Another Gurmagi. Fullock says, I've tried Shrapnel for Ancestral and Burn Heavy. Yeah, Shrapnel Blast is a way to get the Ancestral off of the brain. That's true. That is true. Yep. We looked into Shrapnel. We looked into Thopter Foundry. You got options there. Yeah. Yeah, Shrapnel is a way to make the brain cast the Ancestral. Thopter Foundry is a good way we found to make the brain cast the Ancestral, or... It doesn't have to be Ancestral, you could be casting like... It's fine. You could be casting like a... the fact that he was willing to exile that many of his Snapcaster targets to get the Gurmag on the table makes me feel like the Snap Cryptic bounce on the Angler is not going to be a thing. That's what that says. That's what that says to me. I mean, I'm assuming this is not going to fly, but we shall see. It can't hurt to try. No, I should have tapped the lighthouse there. Another snare. Case in point, snare is fantastic. I'm not able to bounce that back, and now we're dead to a bolt. Yeah, the snare was great for me at the GP. You got a bolt? No, he does not. What do we get? Off the top arena, we get a... I meant to lighthouse there, though. Bolt, yep, you already had it. The slow bolt. The slow knife. Alright, let's board. I mean, like, at the tournament when I was playing against, like, the Juns, the Grixuses, the Abzans, even, I was just taking it out. Does it mean it's bad? No. No. It means... Like, this is a matchup where you can actually tap out for some of these walkers, so you do. You bring them in. Dust, no. Negate, yes. Dispel. Relic is great here. Not much Helix. Don't need Anger. Verdict's fine. Odds is okay. What I'm more interested in is maybe just some to counteract the bolt. I mean, Shock answers the... Shock does a better job answering the tar pit than anything else we can run. Garcelle says, just slept in. How'd GP Charlotte go for you? Heard it was terrible for most participants. Oh, that was because of the fiasco with the pairings. That part did suck, although I just went and got a pizza, which was fun. Boring says, bringing the sudden shock. Yeah, we can bring it in. Good point. Good point. We'll run 2 then. You are absolutely right. It's good here, I think. What was the commandeer for? Oh! Dude, were you not here earlier? This won my match against Tron, day 1. Straight up. I mean, we had to play more games than just, you know, 1 game, obviously, but this was how I won game 3 against Tron and either a game 2 or game 3 against Burn. This feels really good on a Karn. It's probably the nuts. And yes, I did the GP. That was like round 5. Yeah, it was sweet. You missed that? No, it was my favorite card in the 75, but it's very specific. You need to bring it in at the right time. I wouldn't bring it in for this match. Guess Purge, maybe? If he's on Grixis, their targets. I think the only other thing I'd want is either this or this. The ends or the helix. Like, this is fine in a counter war. It also can clean up a couple threats, whereas this is just always going to be a helix. It's a bit of a pet card of mine, I suppose. Is this going to be a tutor mostly this game? Maybe. Are these going to be here on the curvature this time? Maybe. We'll see. It was a 7-3-3, guard yourself. I'm pretty sure. Some people were saying it was an 8-3-2. I'm not sure. But, if we really wanted to find out, I can. Because there's a Star City app or whatever that you could look at. Keep. Seems fine. Yeah, the Commandeer is for Karn. There are other things you can nab with it. That's like probably the best Planeswalker you could get with the Commandeer. I don't know, just like taking control of your opponent's spells feels pretty good. But it's gotta be the right spell. I mean, I would Commandeer it ad nauseum for sure. And that was the deck that won the GP. I would definitely try to Commandeer ad nauseum. Actually, that's pretty gross. Because think about it, if you Commandeer ad nauseum, not only do you get to draw a whole bunch because that deck doesn't pressure your life total. Alright, Vision, sure. Yeah, not only is it good because, well, then they're not the one resolving the ad nauseum, but if we're the one resolving the ad nauseum, we can kind of go ahead and just draw a whole bunch, I imagine. You could probably draw like 10 cards before you have too low a life total to consider drawing more, even as a blue at red deck. Like, sure, you might hit like a Cryptic, and that's, you know, if you're on the Beck Call stuff still, that would hurt, but we could probably draw a reasonable sum of cards. Probably. Alright, double snare. Seems fine, actually, in this matchup. Okay, you know what's nice is these have different set symbols, don't they? So actually we can keep track of when we draw the good. So we can keep track of when we draw the additional snare, because these are both Dissension spell snares, and then this is a Modern Masters spell snare. So when I draw the Modern Masters spell snare, we know it's an extra copy. So this is